They say land doesn't remember, that dirt is just dirt, trees just trees. But I know better. I know land holds memory the way old bones hold weather. My father used to say, "Don't measure value by what grows on the surface, son. Measure it by what survives beneath." I didn't understand it then. Not until I came back to the forest he fought so hard to protect, and found cabins where there should have been silence, fences where there should have been roots. What started as a simple visit to settle a will became something much more. A battle for legacy, for truth, and for the kind of justice that doesn't come with flashing lights, but with patience, paper, and the land itself. Noah Granger hadn't stepped foot in Telluride, Colorado for nearly 2 decades. The mountains still looked like sleeping giants, quiet and unmoving, casting long shadows over the winding roads he used to drive as a teenager. Now, at 42, he found himself behind the wheel of a rental SUV, glancing at the faded road signs as if they might vanish the moment he passed them. He wasn't returning out of nostalgia, it was necessity. His father had passed away 6 weeks ago, and the estate, if you could even call it that, needed closing. There was no one else. His mother had died of cancer when Noah was 12, and he was an only child. The call from the attorney had been brief. A cabin, 35 acres of forest, and a safety deposit box key. His first instinct had been to sell the land. He lived in Denver now, had a stable job as a geotechnical engineer, and wanted nothing to do with the ghosts buried in pine and snow. But the letter changed everything. Inside the safety deposit box, tucked beside an old brass compass and a photo of a much younger Noah holding a trout, was a handwritten note on parchment soft paper. "If you're reading this, son, then you've come home at last. I'm gone now, but our land still stands barely. You'll find what you need in the old cabin. Look closely. Not everything is marked on a map. Some borders only live in memory, and memory is what they'll try to erase." It was signed simply, Dad. Noah had read it twice, then sat back, unsure why his chest felt tight. Now, pulling onto the dirt road that led to the family property, he realized something deeper had pulled him back. Something that smelled like wood smoke and sounded like the crunch of dry needles under hiking boots. The cabin was smaller than he remembered. The porch sagged, and one of the shutters hung loose on rusted hinges. But it was still there, surrounded by thick pine, with the same split-rail fence marking the clearing where he once built tree forts with imaginary blueprints. Inside, it was a time capsule. His father's flannel jacket still hung on a hook near the door. A wood stove sat cold in the corner. The kitchen smelled faintly of cedar and dried sage. And there, on the table, was another envelope. It wasn't sealed. Inside was a hand-drawn map. The ink was faded, but legible. Ridges, tree lines, even a hand-labeled Cold Spring near the north edge. Noah recognized it. He'd seen this map before when he was a boy, but hadn't thought of it in years. But something didn't match. The property line. His father's map extended well beyond what the official county maps showed online. Nearly a full 15 acres more. Noah stepped outside, heart pounding in a way that felt disproportionate. It was just land, wasn't it? Still, he packed a thermos, grabbed his father's compass, and headed into the woods. He passed the familiar stone bridge over the creek, the trail lined with wild fern and rusting fence wire. Birds sang overhead. A squirrel darted across a branch. The deeper he went, the quieter everything became. Then he heard it laughter. It was out of place, sharp, human. He moved toward the sound, and the trees parted into a clearing. Noah froze. There, bathed in golden afternoon light, were cabins. 6 of them. Modern, well-finished, painted in warm earth tones, with solar panels, private decks, Adirondack chairs lined in rows. And in the center, a hot tub bubbling beside a pergola strung with fairy lights. A sign staked near the trailhead read, "Whisper Ridge Eco Retreat. Reconnect with nature. Private property. Registered guests only." What? The hell, his heart thundered. He moved quickly, ducking behind trees, circling wide. From a different angle, he spotted a parking lot made of gravel and timber. 10 SUVs neatly aligned. A young couple was taking selfies on a nearby wooden platform with a view of the ridge. He stepped out. "Excuse me," he said, voice steady but tight. They turned, startled but friendly. "Hey, sorry, are you staff?" the woman asked. "No. I own this land," Noah said carefully. "At least I thought I did." The man chuckled. "Oh, that's wild. We booked this place through a woman named Clarissa. She said her family's owned it for years. We found it on Ecolux Rentals. Pretty pricey, but worth it. Seriously, the views are insane." Clarissa. The name hit like a slap. He hadn't heard it since his teens. Clarissa Jameson had tried to buy the land from his father in the 90s. He'd refused, even after she offered triple what it was worth. Rumors had spread that she was planning a luxury mountain resort. Eventually, she'd backed off publicly at least. Apparently, she had waited him out, and now she'd built on his family's land. Noah kept his composure. "Do you have her contact info?" "Sure," the man said, pulling out his phone. "She's super responsive. Texted us the check-in code and everything." Noah took down the number, nodded, and turned back toward the woods. He didn't speak again until he reached the cabin. Then he said aloud to the empty forest, "You were right, Dad. They came back." Noah didn't sleep that night. He sat at the kitchen table with a legal pad, a laptop running on a weak cell signal, and the hand-drawn map his father had left him. The outlines, creeks, and markers were burned into his memory now, but something about them felt less like directions and more like a warning. By morning, he had a plan. He started by visiting the county assessor's office. The young clerk behind the counter gave him a polite but distracted smile as she pulled up the digital plot records for parcel number 37, his father's land. "According to our system," she said, tapping her monitor, "the Granger parcel ends here." She pointed to a red boundary that cut the property off just before the ridge, where Noah had found the cabins. "And what about this area?" he asked, pointing past it. "That's listed as undeveloped. Owner on record is WR. Properties LLC, registered in 2017. No activity until 2021. Noah's jaw clenched. He thanked her, walked out, and immediately dialed his friend and former law school roommate, Elijah Kramer, now a real estate attorney in Boulder. "You still owe me for not testifying against you during that camping trip in 2003, Noah said as soon as Elijah answered. "That's specific," Elijah laughed. "What do you need?" "Help, big one. I think someone's stolen part of my land." By the next day, Elijah had connected him with a local land surveyor, a man named Paul, with a truck full of measuring gear, a faded baseball cap, and the kind of eyes that had seen a few too many property disputes. Paul walked the property line with Noah for hours, occasionally muttering, or "that's odd." By late afternoon, he dusted off his hands and said, "Your father's boundary markers are still here, buried under moss, sure but intact, and they match this." He held up the hand-drawn map. "So?" Noah asked. "So," Paul said, pulling out a newer digital satellite overlay. "These cabins are at least 1,000 feet inside your original boundary. Someone shifted the digital filing during a reassessment. I'd bet money it was buried in a rezoning packet. Can that be undone? With the right lawyer and the right judge. Absolutely. But you're going to need more than nostalgia. You need evidence of active trespass and illegal resource use." Noah nodded slowly. "Then let's start digging." Over the next week, Noah transformed into someone he barely recognized, calm, methodical, and utterly determined. He spent his days hiking the perimeter, photographing everything. Construction debris buried beneath pine needles, tree stumps from illegally cut timber, piping that ran beneath the forest floor, feeding the cabins with spring water that had sustained his family for 3 generations. His father's system had been brilliant gravity-fed, unobtrusive, and practically invisible, unless you knew what to look for. Apparently, Clarissa did, and she had rerouted it without permission. At night, Noah compiled the photos into a private folder titled Case Granger v. Whisper Ridge. He drafted affidavits, documented timelines, and even recorded video clips of guests at the resort using the outdoor showers and filling thermoses at eco-sustainable hydration stations. Eco-sustainable. That made his skin crawl. Then came the message. Noah had texted the number the couple gave him, Clarissa's number, posing as a potential guest. Her reply came in seconds. Hi. Yes, Whisper Ridge still has a few weekends available. We're adults only. Luxury wilderness lodging. Fully off-grid but with all modern comforts. Let me know your dates, and I'll get you booked. No mention of ownership, no mention of land leases. Just a confident sales pitch. He texted back, "Do you own the land?" asking for tax deduction purposes. This time, the response took longer. Of course, all official, totally private. Liar. That night, he and Elijah had a video call. This isn't just trespassing, Elijah said, scrolling through Noah's folder. She rerouted your private spring system. That's environmental theft. She's also misrepresenting the ownership, Noah added, and collecting money from guests on my soil. Elijah leaned in. Then we hit her from all angles. Illegal construction, environmental misuse, civil trespass, and misappropriation of commercial revenue on private property. But first, one big question. What's that? Do you want to go public? Noah paused. The idea made his stomach twist. He wasn't the type for headlines or conflict. But this wasn't about pride anymore. It was about the forest, about his father, about people thinking they could just take. Yes, he said finally. Let's bring the fight into the light. Noah never thought he'd see his name on a cease and desist letter, but there it was, hand-delivered by a courier in a Navy suit. Wiry unauthorized interference with private commercial operations. Whisper Ridge Eco Retreat. From Jameson Holdings, LLC. He read it 3 times before handing it to Elijah over Zoom. His attorney raised an eyebrow. She's trying to intimidate you. Classic move, Elijah said, scrolling through the contents. Claims your actions recording, photographing, even stepping onto the resort site violate protected commercial zoning. Which, by the way, doesn't even apply to this land. So she's bluffing. She's buying time, Elijah replied. But she knows you're a threat now. Clarissa wasn't wasting any time. The next day, local headlines in the Telluride Courier ran with this. Mountain man or malicious trespasser. Local entrepreneur Clarissa Jameson claims. Harassment by property dispute instigator. The article painted Noah as a reclusive outsider with unstable motives, and praised Clarissa as a visionary woman leading the next generation of sustainable tourism. There were even doctored photos of him lurking on the property screenshots Clarissa had clearly cropped from his own survey footage. Within 24 hours, Whisper Ridge's official Instagram account posted a heartfelt letter to our guests, citing a rise in targeted aggression from a disgruntled local with no legal claim to our grounds. Noah's inbox exploded. Some people offered support. Others accused him of trying to sabotage a woman-owned green business. One message read, "If you hate ecotourism so much, maybe you should go back to wherever you came from." He didn't respond to any of them. But something inside him snapped. This wasn't just about land anymore. It was about truth and the lies people used to bury it. Noah and Elijah filed the lawsuit the following week. Count Y: civil trespass and unauthorized construction on private property. Count 2: illegal use of a private water system and misappropriation of natural resources. Count 3: defamation of character. Count 4: fraudulent misrepresentation of land ownership. The court granted a temporary injunction, halting Whisper Ridge's operations pending a hearing. It was a small victory, but Clarissa struck back harder. 2 days later, her lawyers submitted a deed of transfer allegedly signed by Noah's father in 2002, gifting the northern portion of land to Clarissa's holding company. Elijah called Noah immediately. "The signature's off. Elijah said, voice tight. It doesn't match any of the estate paperwork. Plus, there's no witness, no notary, and the date is 6 months after your father was in the hospital with a stroke. She's forging documents, Noah whispered. She's desperate, Elijah corrected. But this is going to slow us down. And it did. The judge ordered a 30-day freeze on all action until the deed's authenticity could be reviewed by forensic analysts. Meanwhile, Clarissa made her next move, one that Noah never saw coming. One evening, after a long day clearing storm-fallen trees near the cabin, Noah returned to find 2 deputies waiting in his driveway. "We received a complaint, Mr. Granger," one of them said, stiff and formal. "Ms. Jameson has filed a protective order. Claims you threatened her on her property." "I haven't even spoken to her," Noah said, stunned. "She's also alleging vandalism, broken piping near the north cabin." The absurdity of it almost made him laugh. But their faces were stone. "Do you have any security footage of your whereabouts over the past few days?" "Yes," he said slowly. "Multiple angles. You're welcome to view them." The deputies left without arresting him, but the warning was clear. Clarissa was ready to do anything to bury the truth. That night, Noah stood by the stream his father had once called the heart of the forest. The moonlight shimmered across the water's surface, soft and silver. "They'll come for the land, then for your name," his father had written in one of the old journals Noah now kept in his nightstand. "But you don't fight with fire. You fight with patience, with paper, and with the land itself." Noah knew what had to come next. If Clarissa wanted to fight dirty, fine. He'd fight cleaner, but smarter. He wasn't just going to prove the land was his. He was going to expose what she'd done to it. 3 weeks into the freeze order, Noah was exhausted but not broken. Every day, he hiked the property, documenting, cross-referencing the old map, recording water flow, and rechecking the perimeter. But what gnawed at him most wasn't the forged deed, or the smear campaign, or even the threat of legal ruin. It was what Clarissa was doing to the land. The forest was bleeding, slowly and quietly. Trees were cut back near the cabins. The stream was narrower than it should have been. Wildlife had vanished. Noah spotted a pile of burnt brush too close to the ridge, a clear fire hazard. When he found a leaking chemical barrel half buried behind one of the cabins, something snapped inside him. He called Elijah. "She's not just stealing," he said. "She's killing the place." Elijah didn't respond right away. Then, "We may have something bigger than trespass here." When that night, Noah flipped through one of his father's journals for comfort. There were pages filled with weather notes, sketches of plants, quotes from old forest rangers. But one page stopped him. It was a rough sketch, a schematic really, of something underground, marked Main Convergence, 1957 System Upgrade. Noah blinked. It showed a hidden chamber in the woods. A kind of reservoir, a catchment his grandfather had engineered during a drought to hold excess water from the spring. His father must have maintained it in secret, a backup supply. He hadn't seen it since he was a boy. He barely remembered it. The next morning, he went looking. It took 5 hours and 3 blisters. But eventually, he found it. Buried beneath moss and shale, behind a rotting pine stump, was a rusted iron hatch. With a crowbar and a bit of luck, it creaked open to reveal a narrow stone staircase, cold and damp. At the bottom was a small cistern, about the size of a garden shed, lined with old stone and filled with dark, glistening water. The pipework was simple, but brilliant. Gravity-fed, it collected runoff during heavy snowmelt and filtered spring water to maintain pressure in the system. And it was running dry. Clarissa had been siphoning water faster than it could replenish. Noah took video footage, temperature readings, and soil samples. But more importantly, he found something he didn't expect. An old lockbox sealed in wax. Inside was a folded document wrapped in oilcloth and tied with twine. When he opened it, his hands shook. It was a binding legal easement agreement from 1961, signed by his grandfather, and the original county commissioner explicitly stating that the Granger water system was to remain exempt from county integration and maintained as a private agricultural utility, protected under early water rights law. It even included a clause: should said system be tampered with or redirected for unauthorized commercial gain, the rights revert fully to the Granger estate, and the system may be shut without notice. It was ironclad, and no one but the Grangers had known it existed. Until now. Elijah was stunned. "This changes everything," he said. "It's not just trespass. She's in violation of a historic easement. That's federal. She's committed infrastructure theft." "We need to go public," Noah said. "Then we need allies." Noah started with someone unexpected: Claire Thomas, a local biology teacher and environmentalist who had once called him a paranoid land hoarder at a town meeting. He showed her the evidence: the damage to the stream, the water levels, the chemicals, the pipe hacks. Claire's eyes widened as she realized what had been happening beneath the resort's glossy eco-branding. "Jesus," she muttered. "She's greenwashing poison." But that weekend, Claire organized a community forum. It was supposed to be 30 people. Over 100 showed up. Noah stood under the eaves of the local firehouse with Elijah and Claire beside him, facing a crowd that had once doubted him. He didn't give a speech. He played the footage, the barrel, the underground system, the document. He ended with a photo his father, in his flannel jacket, kneeling beside the spring in 1991. "This was never about profit," Noah said quietly. "It was about protecting what can't protect itself. And now, I need your help to finish what my family started." The room was silent for a beat. Then someone clapped, then another, and then the whole room stood and applauded, not just for Noah, but for the truth. The next morning, the Courier ran a different headline: Whisper Ridge accused of violating protected water easement, environmental damage under review. Clarissa's PR team went silent. The booking site took down her listing, and the county, pressured by the outcry, issued a stop work order on all resort activity. Clarissa Jameson wasn't the kind of woman who backed down quietly. She had built her career charming city councils, dodging regulations, and turning red tape into green profits. So when the stop work order landed on her desk and local media turned against her, she didn't retreat. She doubled down. 2 days after the town hall, Noah received a new legal notice, this time from a high-powered Denver firm representing Jameson Holdings, LLC. The headline accusation: intentional sabotage of commercial property, unlawful interference with water infrastructure, and defamation causing reputational harm exceeding $5 million. "She's suing you," Elijah scoffed, flipping through the packet. "She trespasses, poisons the land, and now she claims you hurt her?" "She's losing the public," Noah said, "so she's trying to beat me in court or bankrupt me trying." But that wasn't all. The next morning, Noah woke up to find his truck windshield smashed, his water tank drained, and "thief" spray-painted across the front porch of the cabin. His hands shook as he called the sheriff. "It's escalating," he said. "Someone's going to get hurt." Later that day, Claire sent him a message. "Meet me at the trailhead. Now. You need to see this." Noah arrived to find her standing near the ridge with 2 teenage boys, local scouts who had been helping with water testing. They led him through a narrow trail toward the back of the Whisper Ridge property. What they found turned his stomach. A trench, deep, muddy, freshly dug, leading to a hidden storage tank. Inside was a black tube, pumping chemically treated water back into the main stream. Noah dropped to one knee and took a sample. The smell alone was wrong, metallic and sharp. "They've been using treated gray water to supplement the flow," Claire said, "to fake sustainability for inspections." Noah stared into the water, jaw tight. "And they've been dumping it back into my system." He didn't say anything more. He just stood, walked away from the trench, and called Elijah. "Get the EPA on the line," he said. "Tell them we have a Class C contamination event." That night, Elijah met him at the cabin with grim news. "The environmental case is solid now, But Clarissa's team just filed for a preliminary injunction. If they win, you'll be barred from entering the disputed zone, including the spring. That's half my land, Noah muttered. They know. It's strategic. They want to keep you out until the case drags long enough for you to settle. I'm not settling. I didn't think you would. But even with truth on their side, the pressure mounted. Legal fees piled up. The cabin's repairs had to be paused. Noah couldn't focus, couldn't sleep. Sometimes he wondered if it would have been easier just to walk away, sell the land, disappear. Let someone else fight this fight. But then, he'd pass the old kitchen table, where his father once laid out maps, plans, and pieces of a life no one else understood. You don't fight with fire, he remembered his dad writing. You fight with patience, with paper, and with the land itself. Noah exhaled, steadying himself. He wasn't leaving. Not now. On the day of the emergency court hearing, the courthouse was packed. Local residents filled the gallery. Press lined the halls. Claire sat behind Noah, her arms crossed like a soldier. Even the two scouts who found the trench showed up in clean shirts and serious expressions. Clarissa entered fashionably late, flanked by her attorneys and dressed like she was accepting a business award. She didn't glance at Noah, the judge. A broad-shouldered woman with glacier blue eyes took her seat and called the room to order. Clarissa's lead attorney launched into a polished argument. Noah had interfered with operations, fabricated environmental violations, and orchestrated a community smear campaign for personal gain. But when it was Elijah's turn, he stood slowly, then played a 5-minute montage. Footage of the hidden trench and contaminated tank. Satellite overlays showing the unauthorized cabins. A copy of the 1961 water rights easement. And finally, the video of Clarissa herself, taken months earlier at a conference, bragging. We built on forest land technically still in probate. Once you get a few cabins up, the paperwork always catches up. The courtroom fell into stunned silence. Even the judge looked momentarily caught off guard. She cleared her throat. This court finds sufficient cause to issue a protective order for the Granger estate and its resources. All commercial activity by Jameson Holdings is hereby suspended pending full trial. Mr. Granger retains full access to the disputed land until rightful ownership is settled. Clarissa paled, her jaw clenched. But the damage was done. That evening, Noah stood again at the stream. The wind rustled through the trees. Birds were returning. The water was cleaner now, freer. But this time, he wasn't alone. Claire joined him, standing silently for a while before speaking. You didn't just save your land, she said. You saved this whole forest. He shook his head. I didn't save anything yet. You will, she said. You already started. The trial lasted 7 more weeks. 7 weeks of legal back and forth, expert testimony, environmental data, forensic signature analysis, and video evidence. 7 weeks of whispers in coffee shops and editorials in the Courier that went from skeptical to sympathetic. 7 weeks of Clarissa's empire unraveling, one exhibit at a time. Noah attended every day in silence. He wore the same flannel jacket his father once did, sat in the same pew, took the same route to court through the woods behind the cabin, where the stream still trickled, clean now, cold and proud. And when the verdict finally came, it wasn't just words on paper. It was an echo that rippled through the mountains like thunder. The court finds that all structures built by Jameson Holdings were illegally erected on private property, in direct violation of the Granger water easement, environmental codes, and local zoning ordinances. Effective immediately, all commercial operations are to cease. The property is to be restored to its prior state. Damages in the amount of $2.4 million are awarded to the plaintiff, Mr. Noah Granger. Clarissa didn't speak. She didn't scream or cry. She simply stood, as if hollowed out, and walked away, flanked by lawyers who no longer looked her in the eye. 2 months later, the cabins were gone. dismantled piece by a court-appointed crew, their polished wood now stripped of luxury, reduced to piles of recyclable scrap. The trench was filled. The soil was treated. The signs were removed. The damage wasn't erased, but it stopped growing. The forest sighed in relief. So did Noah. He didn't rebuild the cabins. He didn't pave the land or plant gates. He planted trees. He and Claire, and dozens of local volunteers, neighbors, students, even some former resort staff who'd quit once the truth came out, dug their hands into the earth and planted over 300 seedlings across the ridge and valley. Each one was named for something lost: hope, silence, respect, patience, legacy. And one, planted near the cold spring, was named Dad. The town changed too. Inspired by the case, the county passed the Granger Land Integrity Act, a local ordinance requiring mandatory community review for all rural development and stronger protection of historic water rights. Claire's science class now spent one Friday a month hiking Noah's land, learning how ecosystems restore themselves when left alone. A plaque stood at the trailhead. Protected in memory, defended by truth, the land remembers who stood by it. The forest became more than a backdrop. It became a teacher. One late afternoon, as the autumn light poured golden over the trees, Noah stood by the stream. It was the same spot his father used to take him fishing. He crouched down, dipped his fingers into the water. Cold, clear, unapologetically alive. He heard footsteps behind him. Claire approached, quiet as ever. "They're calling it a landmark case," she said. "The university's inviting you to speak." "I don't think I'm the keynote speaker type," Noah smiled. "You're exactly the type," she replied. "You didn't just win a case, Noah. You changed how people see what they almost forgot." He looked out toward the trees, where the wind whispered through the leaves like old stories returning home. "It wasn't about winning," he said. "It was about keeping a promise." Claire was silent a long moment. "To your father? To the land?" That night, Noah lit a fire in the old cabin stove and sat by the window, watching the shadows of the forest stretch and bend. He didn't know what would come next, but he knew this: the land would outlive them all, and he had done what mattered most. He had listened, and then he had answered. Months later, a letter arrived from the state's Department of Natural Resources. Noah had been nominated for the Conservation Honor Medal. His name, his fight, and his family's story had become part of something larger, a lesson on how ordinary people could defend the extraordinary. He didn't frame the certificate. He hung the map his father left him instead. Faded, hand-drawn, real. Because some borders don't need fences, just someone who remembers where they begin and where they'll never end.